Thanks, Barry, for the warm introduction. As Barry alluded to, we're a platform and a consumer-facing application that transforms raw photos and videos, primarily from your mobile device, into produced personal video stories. And we do it using patented artificial intelligence. So the AI can actually discern a lead character, a secondary character, and I'll show you how it works. But as you'd imagine, being involved in consumer video, we're very interested in the notion of the selfie celebrity and the selfie culture and what that means to culture at large and to media and to commerce. And so, you know, before I dive in, it's kind of a question. The selfie is sort of like the penultimate example. It's the calling card of a culture, of a generation in which the individual narrative is at the center. And that's a switch from, you know, a decade ago where we produced professional content, whether it was video or text or photos, and we published it, and consumers ingested it. And today, this is what the media landscape looks like. And you hear a lot of people talking about it being fragmented, and I suppose in some ways it is. But in other ways, it's much more united than it ever was. And it's united around one central theme, and that is the individual who is pulling and pushing information to and from him or herself every day, hours a day. And so as we think about building businesses, whether they're technological businesses, whether they're consumer packaged goods, whether we're journalists figuring out what the future of journalism looks like, we have to think about the individual and their power of storytelling and how that either benefits us or competes with us, and how we are simpatico given the new reality. So here are some stats. These are true stats in terms of photos published every day to these platforms. Now, of course, not all of them are selfies, but many of them are. And more importantly, they are incredibly strong supporting data point for the notion of the individual as the celebrity in his or her own life. And to be clear, we're not talking about YouTube stars here. We're not talking about Vine stars. We're talking about you and me telling our personal stories every day to those who listen, and they're primarily our friends and family. There are a couple things that I think. So these numbers unto themselves look astounding, right? They're huge numbers. There are two things that I think are even more astounding than the actual numbers themselves. So one is, in the context of video storytelling, we're just at the tip of the iceberg, and I think the photo adoption curve and the use of photos as a form of self-expression is a guidepost for where we're headed. So that's exciting to us. And then the second thing is that the average individual has 3,500 pieces of content. Now, the majority of that content is never shared. More than 70% never sees the light of day. So if you go back to this slide, this represents the minority of the content that's captured and kept by people. And so what's intoxicating to me is when you think about what happens when you unleash the other 70–80% that's stuck on your device somewhere else, right? And so this is what our phones look like, and that's the opportunity that we're chasing at Magisto, and that we think is the future of the individual narrative, is unlocking all this content that has meaning and purpose and just doesn't have a place to go. I'm going to show you this video quickly.
I love everything that has to do with design.
If I can get a little more volume from the audio guys, it'd be great.
Beautiful clothes. I'm addicted to shopping. I just started studying industrial design, and it's pretty interesting. I think it's important to stay connected to how you feel. Emotions are what drives us as human beings. If you feel anything like I do, then this might work. I don't know. Contact me.
So my guess is most of you did not read the text that's over here or really check out the image over here. What's interesting about this little social experiment is it's the same individual, and the text is actually the exact same text that she spoke. And so the point that we make with this exercise is just how powerful video is as a medium to communicate ideas and information. And it's not by coincidence. Storytelling and stories is the backbone in which all human knowledge is built on. It's the way our brains are programmed to understand and process large amounts of information. And so when we think about the future of that 80% of media that never gets shared, we think it's really exciting to think about storytelling and the potential for conveying thoughts, emotions, sense of place, and perspective. So the question that you have to ask is why, given the power of video storytelling and given the massive amount of content out there, sorry, I'm driving the audio guys crazy. This could probably come down a tad. But given those two things, how much content is out there and how powerful video stories are, why doesn't it happen more? And the answer is it's really hard to make a compelling video story. Technologically, it's challenging, and artistically, it's challenging. So even if you had the time, you had the skills, the question is, do you have the artistic ability? And so what we do at Magisto is make the art of video storytelling from raw photos and videos incredibly easy. And the aim is to unlock the power of movie making, of visual storytelling for everyone. So for my mother, who's 70 years old, and it's super easy. You select videos and photos, you tell the algorithm how you want it to feel, and it makes a movie for you. So what's really cool about that is if you think about, like, professional filmmaking, The Hobbit would not be The Hobbit if you watched the imagery raw. It would be 20 years of unedited videos. It'd be unbearable. And where the magic of that story comes from is in editing and production. And the same holds true for everyone's photos and videos here. So here's an example of what Magisto does. This is a clip from a guy who actually works at Magisto. He took his romantic counterpart out for a hot air balloon ride, and you see, this is what he got. And so this next rendering is what the machine, what the algorithm did to his raw footage.
Clap along if you feel like a room without a roof. Clap along if you feel like happiness is the truth. Clap along if you know what happiness is to you.
Pick another editing style and it has a total different resonance. Same exact footage. That is the power of video storytelling, right? You cannot do that in a single photo. You can't do it in an Instagram. You can't do it in a text post. It's the ability to convey the way that you felt. And so we may not make the most beautiful movies in the world. We may not be the most sophisticated technology in the world. But what we're great at is conveying emotion. And we think that the future of the individual narrative relies on and depends on our ability, whether it's Magisto or somebody else, to convey story and to convey emotion. And when you think about the amount of relationships that you manage today, as opposed to what you did in high school, right? You had 10 buddies, or at least in my case, I had 10 buddies that I drove around in my parents' old Pontiac with, and now I keep in touch with, I have 5,000 friends on Facebook, 5,000 on LinkedIn. How do I add emotional depth to those relationships? And I think the folks who answer that question will be doing themselves a good service, will be doing the consumer a good service, and will be doing society and culture at large a good service. So here's how it works. This is a simulation. It's a visualization of how Magisto works. It analyzes footage and photos and imagery and actually audio and could discern a primary character, a primary action versus a secondary one, a primary audio object versus background noise, and it's what's called semantic artificial intelligence. So it doesn't care if it's a room full of cats, if it's your newborn baby, or if it's a landscape with nothing moving. It'll figure out what's interesting in that content to tell the story you want to tell. And so this is a hero slide. It's a little self-congratulatory, but it's a meaningful slide. So in the last 2.5 years, we've gone from 3 million registered users to 65. And part of it is based on the elegance of the software. But I think, in all honesty, the main reason for the growth is the need, is the marketplace. And I see this as a data point, not in support of Magisto, although it is, but in support of the notion of consumer storytelling, of image-based storytelling, and of the need for it. So again, whether it's us, whether it's Periscope, whether it's Vine, or somebody that we've yet to meet, it's happening, it's gonna happen, and these stories are going to be told, full stop. So today, one of the things that we're announcing here is a new editing style that focuses mostly on the audio. And so many of the examples that I shared and sort of my spiel here is about pictures and about everyday video. But what we heard from our users is that there is a dire need for narrative, and that conveying your story sometimes relies on literally the ability to convey it through speech. So our latest theme, which is we called News, and we'll build a series of themes off this, relies more heavily on the audio than the imagery so that you can quite literally tell your story. And to launch it, we partnered with CBS, and we're doing a series called Office Crashers, where startups can tell their story using this theme and be featured on CBS as, as winners in telling their own story. And so this is the promo for it, and then at the end you'll see an example of how the theme works. And this is actually, so we're our headquarters are here in Menlo Park, but our technology and development is outside of Tel Aviv and Ness Ziona, and this is imagery that comes from Tel Aviv, actually. And here, quite literally, this is what the brain did to some very average footage shot in our office.
Magisto is a mobile service that automatically edits your photos and videos into amazing movies. Working at Magisto is a really fun place and a really interesting place because you really have the fusion of the arts and the sciences. On the one hand, you have the most creative people in the world working on the editing styles and basically how to teach the computer how to edit movies like a human would. And at the same time, backing it all up is some amazing technology. Both the founders have PhDs in computer vision, and the algorithm is one of the most sophisticated pieces of software, especially applied in this space to video editing out there. And if you're skeptical, if it sounds too good to be true, come visit us and check it out for yourself.
So I'm wrapping this thing up, but one concluding message is that user-generated content and social is no longer a nice-to-have. It's no longer a line item in a marketing budget. It's the substrate in which we do business. And the degree to which we succeed as marketers, as journalists, as product managers, really depends on how we factor this human storytelling component into our thinking. And so I call it mission critical as opposed to, an appendage. There is an opportunity and a brutal reminder for us to remember what industry we're in, right? And the cliche classic example is the railroad industry, who thought they were in the railroad industry, and ultimately they were in the transportation industry, and their failure to acknowledge that is what blew them up. And so what I would argue is that in an attention economy where the individual has the strongest voice, that we need to remember that we are in the storytelling industry no matter what business we're in, A, and B, that the consumer's story is more important than our own as industrialists. And in conclusion, a quote from Philip Pullman, who is an author that I actually had never heard of prior to pulling this quote, but I thought it was a fantastic one, which is that after nourishment, shelter, and companionship, stories are the thing we need most in the world. We are compelled as human beings to tell our stories, to share them. It's what draws us closer together. It's what builds our society, and the future is bright in that context. So thanks very much for listening. Again, my name is Reed Genauer. I'm not sure how I'm doing on time, but my guess is I've got some time. So anybody have questions or comments they'd like to make?
The ability to select scenes, like if the algorithm doesn't pick something that you like, can you edit that out and change something up?
No. No, I'm teasing. Actually, so right now we have a function that we call tweak, but it's really a remix. So you can go in and deselect imagery or choose new imagery, and you sort of have to learn how the algorithm works, and you can game it, you can hack it more or less to get it to choose the right things. But one of the most requested features that we get is some light tweak feature. And the challenge is to keep it dumb enough so that everybody can use it and create a small suite for people like yourself who have the sophistication, the desire, the time to actually do those tweaks. So the short answer is no, or sort of, and the long answer is we will in the future. In the back.
Are there different prices for the programs?
I'm sorry, I couldn't hear you.
Are there different prices for the programs?
Yeah,
for
so
instance,
we're a freemium model, much like Spotify and LinkedIn and others that you know well. So you can come in and use 80% of the power of Magisto for free. And if you choose to be a more sort of empowered storyteller, you can pay for premium features. So basically, you can make as many 1-minute movies as you want for free. And each movie can be composed of 10 minutes of video and 10 photos, and can be streamed from any connected device. And should you want to make longer movies, have Magisto analyze more photos and video content, or download the finished file, and lastly see it in HD, then you need to pay. Bueller?
What's the render time?
So it takes, on average, and it's getting better, but it takes on average 5 minutes. So it takes, let's say, 45 seconds to set up. Of that 5 minutes, probably a minute of it is actually the transcoding and upload, and then say 3-4 minutes, depending on how much beef you give it, right? So if you give it 5 photos, it takes very little time. But that's the average, is about 4 minutes.
How you doing? Question, is it output HD?
So right now our standard output is SD. We're moving that to HQ, which is sort of between HD and SD, and then you can pay to have the HD download. The question was, how long did it take to think of it and design it and bring it to market? And it took about 2 years for the prototyping and really refinement of the back end. We've been in the market for about 3.5. And so in those 3.5 years, we've gone from 0 to 65 million registered users. And we're founded by a founding duo from Tel Aviv who both have PhDs in artificial intelligence and video vision. And the one who, Oren Boyman, who's our CEO, happened to be getting a PhD in video vision on one hand and have his first child on the other, and he went to make a personal movie about the birth of his kid and was like, this is insane. I'm an PhD computer scientist and I can't make a personal movie, studying video, and I can't make a personal movie. And so he put the two together, and here we are. Yeah, so the question was, where does the music come from? And there's a much longer and dirtier answer to this, which has to do with how, insanely backwards the music industry is, but that's just a jab at the music industry. The answer is we license content, and we program each theme to have songs that support the mood that the theme is intended to prescribe. So if you choose the cute theme, you're going to get music that is cute. If you choose the action sports theme, you're going to get music that supports energy. And then lastly, we give you the option to upload your own music and make your own choices. I will say, typically, our choices are better, but clearly I have a bias. Anybody else? Go on, this is a lively group. I am, yeah. I am in, a lot of people say I look like fat David Hasselhoff. Pooj's a colleague, and I am a singer and songwriter in another life. You can see me in a lot of B movies. Did you have another question other than? I was wondering if you could sing a little. Booyah! Anybody else? I'll tell you what. You got to pay to see that. All right, guys, thanks so much. My name's Reed Genauer. I appreciate you listening.